In this episode of Highlight Sundays, cameras. Hello and welcome back to Highlight Sundays. It is the 37th week of 2012 and here are your highlights. First things first, you'll be glad to know that there is no PSA of the week. Things seem to have been fine, no data has been lost and nobody has been hacked. And that calls for celebration. Also, it seems that pretty much all of my articles this week has come from Lifehacker. Sorry about that, I didn't actually plan that out. But anyway, let's jump right into the content. Our first item this week is, well, cameras. Two new cameras have been announced this week, one from Nikon and one from Sony. Nikon has announced the D600, which is a full-frame 20-something megapixel camera. It is your usual interchangeable lens DSLR. And that's not an interesting thing for today. What is more interesting is that Sony has actually introduced a new Cybershot model. As you know, Cybershots are geared more towards the consumer. They are so-called the less professional still cameras produced by Sony. But this one also sports a full-frame sensor. I'm talking about the brand new Sony Cybershot RX1, which is actually a fixed lens camera that sports a full-frame sensor. I like how the whole full-frame thing is kind of catching on. It's nice to see that companies are actually putting in full-frame sensors, even for products that are considered consumer products. I mean, it's good to see that people are starting to, acknowledge the whole issue about sensor size and how important it really is. Of course, having said that the Sony Cybershot RX1 is more of a consumer camera, the fact that it carries a full-frame sensor sort of has an effect on its price. The Cybershot RX1 is $2,800 and the Nikon D600 will run you slightly above $2,000. I guess while full-frame sensors are catching on, so to speak, their price is still, somewhere up there. Our next article today still pertains to cameras. In particular, if you have a Canon point-and-shoot camera, some tools actually exist for you to turn it into a camera with more manual settings than you will actually have. At least more settings than is usually present in a point-and-shoot camera. In fact, this is a video link to Lifehacker's channel where they show off the CHDK mod. What this is basically just a little firmware that you install in an SD card. You press a certain button combination when you boot up your camera, and the contents of that mod is actually being loaded into the camera's memory. The cool thing is, this whole mod is non-intrusive because it does not actually overwrite your firmware. It just kinda writes on top of it and gives you some extra features. Very cool, but I believe compatibility is somewhat limited. But yeah, check it out. There'll be an annotation link on screen as well as in the video description for you to understand more about the CHDK mod. And that's it about cameras. Next up we have this little article, still from Lifehacker, called Defrag Your Brain with a Spark File. This one's really interesting. It's more of a self-help thing. Now here's the deal. Let's say you're just doing your day-to-day work, or just, at a random period of time in the day, an idea occurs to you. And of course you have that overpowering impulse to actually, just work on it. But the thing is, maybe you haven't really thought out that idea very fully. And if you were to actually, just jump right in and work on it, maybe things will not turn out to its full potential. What the author of this article suggests is that instead of jumping in and working on it, just write down the idea somewhere, wherever is convenient, be it on paper, be it electronically, and just hold on to that idea. And do the same for basically every idea that occurs to you. So what you eventually have is, be it a piece of paper or an electronic document of some sort, that is basically just a collection of all your ideas. You can revisit that right out maybe once a week or so and just collect your ideas. And maybe you can make something more out of the ideas than you could at the beginning. Very smart concept. I believe it will be useful for a lot of people. Finally, this article is, well, you can call it a classic. Basically because I've heard of this quite a long time ago, as well as many variations of it. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about this little article on Lifehacker once again, which is titled Fill in Scratches on a DVD with Peanut Butter. Of course, the idea is that, well, the oily residue of peanut butter will sort of fill in the scratches, so the laser will have slightly less trouble actually reading the scratch portions of the disc. The end of the article also suggests some alternatives to peanut butter in case you prefer to eat the peanut butter. It is said that you can also use toothpaste, Vaseline or Pledge wax. Now, why did I say this is classic? Well, I've already heard of this maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I've tried the toothpaste method on some CDs and that didn't help at all. What can I say except your mileage may vary? Well, that's all there is for today's episode of Highlight Sundays. If you have any comments, queries or suggestions, and especially if you have anything to share for the next episode of Highlight Sundays, please do feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. As always, I appreciate every like, favorite and subscription you give me. Once again, that's it for today's episode of Highlight Sundays. Until next time, you are watching 0612 TV.